everybody, Anthony here from Crazy Tech Lab, and today if you are in the market for a super premium case for your high-end gaming PC, then we have the case for you, because we are going to be reviewing the brand new Be Quiet Dark-Base Pro 901. So this thing was featured at Computex recently. We've got it here in the flesh today. We're going to be taking a look at just some of its fantastic features, because it does have some pretty awesome stuff both inside the case, some very, very interesting, unique things going on. It also has the biggest accessory box I have ever seen. This thing is absolutely massive. I kind of squealed like a little pig when I saw that in the main case box, because I do love a big accessory box. It just means that there's a whole bunch of stuff included that allow you to customize the case, and there's yet another big accessory box with other bits that you actually use when you build the PC, but the big box we just saw has a load of customizing bits, so you can change the airflow, you can even change the layout of this PC as well. So it's really, really interesting if you are into your high-end PCs and cases. I would say only if you're interested in high-end. I mean, you can buy this case if you are building a low to mid-range PC, but the problem is you're going to be spending a fair amount of money doing it, because this thing costs around $300, which is obviously quite expensive for a case, but maybe not so much for a case of this caliber, because you can fit an absolute mountain of hardware inside, especially when it comes to liquid cooling. So today we're going to be checking out those features, basically looking at some eye candy with this PC and coming to some conclusions at the end. First though, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is scdkey.com, where right now you can get great deals on software such as Windows 10, Windows 11 and Microsoft Office. And even better is I've got a 25% discount code to share with you guys. Windows 10 Professional, for example, which is fully upgradable for free to Windows 11. All you have to do is click Buy Now, enter the code CRT25 into the promotion code box, click Apply, and the US price will drop from $22.09 down to just $16.57, and in the UK, you'll see the price fall to just £12.79. Once you've paid, head over to your order page, click the Get Key button, and copy your Windows key code. When you're in Windows, you want to move your mouse over to the Start button, right-click, go to Settings, then Update and Security, and then move up to Activation, and finally click on Change Your Product Key, copy and paste your brand new product key into the box, click Next, then click Activate, and your Windows 10 installation is now activated. You can do the exact same thing with Office 2021 Professional, CRT 25, click Apply, and you will see a hefty discount. Thanks again to SCDKey for sponsoring today's video. So let's have a walk around of this monster then, and as you can see, it's very, very large, but it is designed to take some pretty amazing systems inside. So there's obviously extended ATX support, so if you've got a really, really high-end PC, this case will be able to house those extended motherboards, whether they are mainstream desktop or high-end desktop. There's plenty of mainstream desktop extended ATX motherboards out there, especially on the high end of Intel and AMD. So what we have is a pretty good case when it comes to cable tidying. I will say that now. There's loads and loads of space in here, and Be Quiet has really gone to town on just keeping things easy when it comes to hiding the cables as well. So we've got a bracket up here, and you can feed your cables through to the other side. So obviously if you've got angled SATA cables, if you are using hard disks, you probably are in a machine of this caliber, then obviously you want to make sure that they are right angled, so you can just feed the cable straight through there. ATX 24 pin and other stuff, you know, USB Type C or USB 3.0, those kind of things, they can all be routed through that panel. And as you can see here, there's no opening on this side. So I do like that, because a lot of manufacturers just cheap out and they just have the bracket here. But if you kind of scoot around here and you look at your case from this angle, you can see all the cables just sticking out the end around there. And there's a similar contraption for the graphics card, which we'll get to in a minute. There's like a bracket that goes up that I think it's like a double sort of it doubles as a GPU support and a cable hiding device as well, which is quite cool. So vertical graphics cards, they are supported, but not in the usual manner with just a hole for, you know, vertical graphics cards. This whole panel here actually rotates. So you rotate it because it's square, so it can sit at a 90-degree rotation, which is quite cool. So, and it also means that you have the ability to kind of adjust where your graphics card sits. So if you imagine all these graphics card mounts, all these I/O blanking plates, these openings here, if you just imagine it rotated, you've got probably the first one sitting here, but even with a triple slot graphics card, you can probably move it way back away from your side panel because you want your graphics card to sit as far away from your side panel as possible, and that's what a mount like this allows you to do. So a lot of the universal mounts look a lot like that. They just have lots and lots of PCI mounts, so you can mount your graphics card wherever you want to do that. The downside though is that you don't get a PCI Express riser cable in the box, and I think at $300 that's probably going to leave a bit of a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially if you're stepping up to a premium case such as this one for the first time. But it is what it is, and I guess it allows people to buy a riser cable of their own choosing, whether they want to go with PCI Express 3 or PCI Express 4. Not why you want to go with PCI Express 3 at this point. I mean, they are a lot cheaper, I guess, but given how things are going and that there are already PCI Express 4 graphics cards and motherboards obviously out there, and you also want to be wary of mixing PCIe 3 and 4 devices as well, because that can cause your system to be a tad unstable, as we've found out with certain mini ITX cases recently. So this case really prides itself though on customization in terms of being able to do different things. So you can have an inverted layout. You can swap the motherboard tray around and have an inverted layout, which I generally prefer for a lot of things, especially with cooling. It also helps with can help with water cooling as well, just a slightly different layout. But really, it's on the customization of the exterior features where this case really shines. So to start with, if I just remove the front panel, which is very, very easy to do, just kind of pops off like so, and you didn't hear me wrenching or anything. I'm not down the gym every day, so I'm not like weirdly strong enough to do that. So it just comes off. It's very firmly stuck on, but it does pop off easily. It's just designed to do that with a whole bunch of stuff on the inside. So one of the reasons why this case is expensive though is a whole bunch of kind of touch contact PCBs like this one, and these are either for the lighting or fan control and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole bunch of panels in here that are removable, but to reduce the number of cables that you have to deal with, they have these touch basically these contacts that when you push the panel on, these just make contact with points on the case. As you can see down there, we've got the contacts. So this one here though is for the RGB lighting, and the lighting is just through this strip here. So something else I really like is how well all the panels kind of sit on this case. It's a really, really nice looking case. I think we've got trying to feel whether this is actual aluminium. I think it is, because it is actually cold, so you do actually have aluminium on the front panel there. And this is where the first part of the customization that we're going to look at comes from. So if we just flick over here for a second and we look at the accessory box, the giant accessory box, we've got a replaceable roof section, so that would just kind of get rid of all the vents in the roof if you just want a cleaner look. Then we also have an optional vent that will take over with us now. Another option for cooling in the case is to use the side panel as a fan and radiator mount. So that's what that is for. And this is the other panel that we're going to be taking over as well. So this is just one accessory box. We've got another one just over to the right of us here that we'll be having a look at in a second. So if we just go over here, this one actually replaces that metal panel in the front of the case. So if we just look at how that works quickly, it's pretty quick and easy to do. I've done this once before, so it's not blind on camera, because things like that have a habit of going wrong, even if they work out fine the first time. So there's just a load of poppers here. It doesn't take very long at all. It's like a 10-second job to get this panel out. And there we go. Super, super easy to do. And then you're just left with a hole to mount the vented panel for a bit of extra airflow, if that's what you want. Now, the case is really designed for low noise. You know, the company's trademark is "Be Quiet," so it's and it prides itself on occasions even sacrificing airflow for lower noise levels. So just one of those things that you need to be aware of. But something I really did like is how well these panels all fit together. Now, the panel gaps on this thing, I've just clipped it on. There's pretty much zero there. It's a really, really nice looking panel. It fits super, super well. And occasionally you'll see these things just kind of not fitting well if they're optional and you fit them on, but there's none of that here. It fits really, really snugly. So that's nice to see. Replacing it, and there we go. It's already clipped on, and you can still, even with this one, you can still see the RGB lighting going around the bottom. Now, something I did notice is that once it's mounted, there's a slight bulge in the panel down here. So what I'd be tempted to do is just kind of maybe just sort of flex that back in before you put it on, just to make sure there's no, just to kind of get it to encourage it to kind of sit straight, because at the moment when you look down, that panel is not kind of, it's kind of blocking the RGB lighting, which would probably bug me. So that's just one slight area of disappointment with this case. I'm not sure why it's actually doing that. It just seems to be, once it's fitted and once you install it, it just kind of gets squished a little bit from the side. So that's just, as I was mentioning, the panel gaps and everything else are really impressive, but that's probably more important to deal with than a panel gap. So slightly disappointing there from the front panel, because mainly, I mean, normally you wouldn't notice it. Like from here, I can't really notice that at all. But the problem is it sits right above the RGB lighting. So, and that RGB lighting from this angle, as I think you can see, literally you go from being able to see that white bar where the RGB lighting will sit to not being able to see it in the middle. So that's going to look like there's kind of a bit of RGB lighting either side, nothing on the middle. So yeah, bit of an issue. What I might do quickly now is just reverse that panel and see if we can fix that thing. Now I think the panel just kind of sits, you can reverse it because all the clips are in the same way if you flip it up. And I just want to have a look at this panel to see whether or not it is bent. So there's no obvious bend that way around. I think you can see that. And if you look here, it does look like there is a bit of a bend in that panel. I think you can see that. I can definitely see that. So I'm just wondering if we can just like sort of flex that back a bit to see if we can get rid of that bend. So it's not going too well, I don't think. It just seems like that's... Obviously, you don't want to have to do this, so it's a bit of a pain. But we'll see if we just flex that, whether it's made it any better at all. And yeah, I think we're kind of onto a winner there. So I don't know whether this is just because it's it's like an early sample of this case, but I will mention it to be quiet that panel just seemed to be a bit bent coming out of the box, but I've pretty much fixed that there just by giving it a bit of a flex. So if your panel arrives slightly bent, just give it a good flex back. Not too much force, you don't want to break it, but obviously it's a bit disappointing given how premium the case is. You kind of want this panel to just kind of sit there, and I suspect it's actually probably come from shipping, because this accessory box is pretty flexible, as you can see. So it's when you've got large flat panels with very thin sections of metal in there, they are going to be prone to bending. So I don't know, it's all conjecture. I can't say for sure what happened. All I know is that panel was bent coming out the box, but thankfully it does look like we have fixed it, and just a blank panel seemed to be absolutely fine. So for the time being, I am happy with how this case goes. So I think we're all on there properly again. So that's the front panel. So if we, what I'll probably have to do is just kind of roll the case on its side, because there's no way I'm going to be able to video the top of this thing without standing on a ladder or something. So one of the things I really like about the case is the wireless charger on the top. So we've got a QI or Qi, however you want to say it, wireless charger on the top. And this thing is super cool because we've got 15 watts fast charging on this thing rather than 5 watts on the previous version. So there's a lot more power being driven to your phone, as long as your phone can actually support that kind of level of charging. Now we've also got a touch sensitive fan controller and lighting controller here, power button as well, no reset button by the looks of things. We've got a generous 4 USB type A ports up here, and also a type C USB port as well, and that's obviously the full fat type C, and you will need the type C connector on your motherboard to use it. So while we've got the case on its side, it's probably going to be easier looking at the base of the case too. So we've got some very, very large rubber pads, so this thing is not going anywhere once it's sat down on a grippy surface. And to protect the base of the case from dust, we've got a removable dust filter. So I am just going to see how easy it is to remove this out. And actually, I think I've maybe just realized what you need to do. I believe you need to pop off the front panel to, there we go. Yeah, you need to pop off the front panel to actually remove that dust filter. So that's maybe a bit of a pain, but the plus side is that the front panel is going to kind of have that top to bottom look to it. And if you had the dust filter being able to be removed when the front panel was installed, obviously there's going to have to be some kind of section at the bottom that won't look as clean. So obviously you're not going to be clearing the dust out every day or anything like that, so it's not going to be too much of an issue. Another maybe like small panel gap there down the side, it could maybe fit a little bit more snugly, but yeah, nothing too much to worry about, I don't think. And sticking with this side of the case, obviously here we have the side vent, and I will just pop off the rear side panel so we can get a look at the cable tidying and all that kind of stuff inside. So obviously the side vent in here, allowing for extra airflow, but only if you use the side fan and radiator bracket, which is this thing, which I'm just reaching around to grab. So you can replace this panel here, which has obviously got a stack of 2.5-inch SSDs, SSD mats in there, and you basically fit this thing in here instead, and that can obviously house a triple 120mm radiator, 360mm radiator, and that will sit behind the vent like so. So that's I kind of like the side vents because it keeps things looking nice and tidy, and just adds an extra element of airflow in your case. And obviously in this case there's extensive radiator support. I believe you can fit 3 360mm radiators and even a 420mm radiator in the front, so there's a whole bunch of room for custom liquid cooling. So here obviously we've got a really nifty cable tidying channel with lots of Velcro ties, so they kind of tie off on the side there, and we've got a load more ties in the box as well. So it's a really interesting way of cable tidying in here actually, because the cable anchor points are actually raised. I think you can see that they kind of jut out from the case rather than being embedded into it on a sort of flat. So here you can have great like trunks of cables running along and just tie them off with the ties. So I really like that, and there's another one up there of course. And one thing I will do now is just kind of come down here. Now this, oh, just dropped a panel off behind me, sorry about that. The panel down here is for hard disks. Obviously that whole thing comes out. There's a lot of screwed together construction here to aid the sort of modularity of the case, pulling some things out, putting other things in, and that kind of stuff. There is also optical drive support, which is kind of interesting, given it's a modern case. I don't really know anybody that uses a an optical drive these days. But if we just put down here, you'll see the front section of the case actually pops open. There we go, and you can actually fit a DVD drive in there. Or if you want to be funky, you could maybe do like a bay reservoir or something like that. That's one idea that you could do in the case. So lots and lots of funky stuff going on. And what I will quickly do is show you another interesting thing that I saw in the roof section. We'll have a look at the roof now. And this thing pops off tool free, and we're just going to have a look at some of the things that we get inside. So one thing I really did like is the fan controller up here. So, or actually, it's actually not a fan controller, it's a PWM hub. But if I just swap it around, it'll be easier looking inside the case. So, as you can see down there, we've got three PWM headers, and they are all controlled. They run off down here, and they are all attached to the fan control on the front panel, or you can just run off and control these things from your motherboard. But what it does mean is that if you've got 3 fans up here, you can actually control them all from these headers. So you can just hook them straight up to all these headers. And again, we've got a touch or a contact plate down here. So if I remove this panel, you'll see what I mean. So we've got the 3 PWM headers, and as this panel sits downwards, this contact is basically a like a touch contact, like pressed together PWM control with the four cables, and that just connects to the circuit board up the top there. So that's a pretty neat design. So it just means that you can attach your radiator, your fans to these 3 ports here, and have them already connected. So literally you could just plug in all your fans, your radiator, and not have to deal with any cables afterwards. You could do all your cable tidying on the actual removable bracket here. The only downside is that any RGB cables you would need to deal with separately, but at least the fan control is already sorted before you put your radiator into the case. So if we look at some of the other features that we've got here, we've got removable vents in the front of the case. Now, usually these things are removable, just like so, to allow you to fit larger radiators in here. So, for example, if you wanted to remove the drive cages down here, you could remove that whole section down there. You can get rid of that. You can have a large radiator that kind of sits in here. Ample room, obviously, for you know, if you go for 120mm radiators, you've essentially got unlimited clearance here for like a 60mm radiator, and 2 rows of fans if you wanted to, or as you can see, you've got room for larger things as well, 140mm based radiators. You can also remove that section down there and install a 120mm fan. So if you do that, then you'll want to install the venting panel that we've got here. So that's a nice feature as well. And as you can see, it does kind of direct or attempt to direct the airflow at your graphics card, because those vents are angled. What I might have liked to have seen, given the sort of abundance of plastic components, is something like the angled vent that we've seen from Fractal Design recently. I think like a drop-in vent that you could use down there, that would be something that would be relatively easy to construct and manufacture. And as we saw with some of the Fractal Designs cases, it really did improve cooling. So still, you can see definitely that that's what Be Quiet was thinking about, because those vents are angled. But I think it wouldn't have been too difficult to actually, you know, do something a little bit more elaborate and have a proper vent going up at an angle from that fan down below. And that would have definitely improved graphics card cooling. So we will see just how the cooling is improved later when we build a PC into this. We'll try with the standard mount and also with this vented mount, and just what improvement actually happens with the cooling. So what I'd like to do is basically run over my best and worst things about the Be Quiet Darkbase Pro 901. So my top 3 things I love about this case. Number 1 is the rotating graphics card mount, so you can have a vertically mounted graphics card, and there is obviously plenty of support for 2, 3 and 4 slot devices, so no matter how big your graphics card, you're still going to be able to run it vertically. The other thing I love is the touch or contact cable-free PWM hub that we've got here. So this runs round to the fan controller at the front of the case. No cables needed, so you can connect all your fans and your radiator up to these 3 things and cable tidy them before you actually mount the bracket in the case. I think that's a really good feature. Something else I really like about this case is the adjustable
anti-sag graphics card support and cable covers. So as you might have noticed, the cables in a lot of graphics cards, mainly Nvidia's latest ones, sit in the middle and can look pretty unsightly however you mount them. So we've got the RTX 4080 Founders Edition here, and if we hold that up, you can see that's pretty much where it goes in the case, and this thing, which I've already adjusted to support this card, goes over like that. So you've got a cable cover and anti-sag device all in one there, and it looks pretty cool. It's adjustable for pretty much any graphics card out there, and it's going to look a little odd if you use it with an AMD card, I guess, if the power ports are down here. But what you can actually do is just move this thing around and hide the cables wherever you go, because the base is magnetic. So your graphics card's obviously not going anywhere. This thing doesn't need to be held in place with screws, and it just means that you can actually adjust it to wherever your cables are on your graphics card. And of course the support, which is just under here, I think you can see that there, that's adjustable up and down as well. So I really like the fact that that's included with the case, and it kind of makes up the fact that the case doesn't include a riser cable.
Moving on to a few things that I don't like about this case now then, and I am still hung up about the lack of a PCIe riser cable. Now, I know I just mentioned that the anti-sag and cable hiding device was a really good feature to include with the case, and it does go some way to kind of remedying the fact that the case doesn't come with a PCIe riser cable. But I think on a case at this price and this premium, you kind of expect it to be in the box. Even if it's not a question of price, you still expect to be able to do everything that you want to do with this case, given how premium it is and everything else that it comes with. So I'm still a bit hung up that Be Quiet didn't include one, and they did actually release one at the same time. So kind of a bit of a shame from Be Quiet there. The next feature I'm not too keen on is the inclusion of a manual fan speed controller. I don't really feel that these have any place in a modern PC. I used to absolutely love them 15, 20 years ago maybe, but these days your motherboard's BIOS is a much better way of controlling your fans. Now, one thing I do like is that you can actually press the sync button here and you can flick back to PWM control from your motherboard. So if you just want to shut your PC up for 15 minutes while you watch something on Netflix, you can do that. But other than that, your best bet is to use your motherboard's BIOS. So this is a feature that kind of adds to the price and maybe somewhat needlessly.
Something else I'm not too keen on with the case are the side panels. So we haven't got any elaborate pins or hinges or anything like that. You've just got basic captive thumb screws at the back here holding the panel on. My main issue with it though is that it can be very stiff and very difficult to get on and off. And here you can see I'm having to apply a bit too much force to get that panel, and it's just a bit awkward to deal with when the rest of the case is pretty good. Getting it back on is probably even worse, whether you're dealing with this very heavy glass panel. It just seems to need such precision to get it on, and it's when you're trying to deal with something as big and heavy, it's just really difficult. And even right now, it's just not getting in. So there we go, just a bit frustrating. Your arms hurt and it's not really what you want. And the far panel, obviously you're having to deal with cables underneath that, and that can be even more challenging. So I would have liked to have seen something a bit more elaborate here from Be Quiet.
Moving on to the results now then, and we have a few things to look at here because I've carried out tests with the Darkbase Pro 901, with the front mesh panel installed, with the front sealed panel installed, and with the fans at different speeds as well. So we've got a few things to look at, and the cases I should say that I'll be comparing against to now are the NZXT H7 Flow, which is a standard tower case with a few fans inside and a mesh front panel, and of course the fantastic NZXT H9 Flow, which is a kind of glass clad chassis as well. So we've got two pretty decent cases from NZXT in the works here, and Be Quiet will be glad to know that with the mesh front panel and the fans on full speed, the CPU temperature and the GPU temperature were the lowest, so they managed to outstrip those NZXT cases, albeit by just a degree on their CPU temperature. So if we move the closed front panel into place. This has a small effect on the CPU temperature that rises by 2 degrees C. You can see here on the left the second yellow bar, we've got 42 degrees there, and on the GPU temperature didn't seem to impact it that much. We've got the same same GPU and CPU temperatures with the high fan speeds, whether you have the closed front section or the mesh front section, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference there. Moving further down the graph though, we've got the fans at low speeds, and this is what had much more of an impact. So if you want to run the fans very low speeds, that will unfortunately have a significant impact on your cooling. So we see the both closed panel and mesh panel getting 45 degrees C on the CPU, and on the GPU we see the front mesh panel getting 52 degrees and the closed front panel getting 55 degrees C. So those are significantly higher than the case fans at lower speeds. Now, or case fans at higher speeds, should I say. So what we'll do now is move on to my brand new test system. This test system was using some pretty old hardware. It was a Ryzen 5 1600X and a Radeon 6700 XT, I believe, so relatively old hardware. My new test system uses a Core i5 12600K and a Radeon RX 7900 XT, so we'll be looking at those results in a moment. So here we're looking at the new hardware then, and with some slightly beefier hardware we've got pretty much the same results, albeit the mesh panel did seem to make slightly more of a difference when it came to the CPU temperature. We've got a 3 degree difference between the mesh panel and the closed panel, and also if we have the mesh panel but run the fans on low, that seemed to had a really big impact on the CPU temperature. So it's just got just having a real impact on the airflow going through the case, and also the rear fan having much more of an impact here with the larger air cooler and hotter running processor that we've got in here this time. So moving on to the GPU, and there's not really that much difference here. The 7900 XT, large triple slot, or large triple cooler, or triple fan cooler, should I say, fairly large, and it's going to be doing a pretty good job of cooling itself, so it just needs to be fed airflow. The only real way you're going to be doing that is by shoving air into it through a lower vent or something like that, which is obviously not what is going on here. So very little difference with a modern powerful GPU between full fan speed and low fan speed, and mesh front panel and sealed front panel. So what do we make of the Be Quiet Darkbase Pro 901 then? Well, in spite of a few niggles such as the tricky to install and remove side panels, the fact that despite its price it doesn't come with a PCIe riser cable, and the fact that the front optional panel was slightly bent out of place out of the box, although that was easily rectified, in spite of those things, I do really like it. I love the adjustable graphics card mount that also hides your cables. That's going to be really beneficial to pretty much anybody, especially if you own a recent Nvidia card. And I like the modern features such as wireless charging, the touch buttons for the RGB control, and just a whole bunch of other things about this case. Cable tidying, the fact it's got loads of room inside for liquid cooling gear, and even has a couple of slots for DVD drives or 5¼ inch bays as well, whatever you might want to use those for these days. So there's a lot of kind of retro feeling here, as if someone that used to build PC cases or used to build PCs and is an old school enthusiast has had their hand inside, had a hand in designing this case, basically. That's what it feels like to me, and that's great in some ways and maybe not so great in others. For example, on the front panel we had the manual fan speed controller, and I just really don't think that there is a place for that anymore in a modern PC case. Your motherboard is going to do a much better job of doing that, as much as I loved manual fan controllers back in the day. So for the price, you're getting pretty much everything that you need here and some. The only things I would have changed is including a PCIe riser cable, because I just want to have the option to do that straight out of the box. I don't want to have to go and source extra parts. And other than that, the case is well built. I would have absolutely no qualms about fitting my own high-end PC in here, whether it's air-cooled like we've got here today. There's clearly plenty of space for air cooling or water cooling, of course. So I'd like to thank Be Quiet for sending over the chassis, and we will be back very, very soon with lots more reviews and features and all those kind of things. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will catch you soon.